students, welcome to Learner's Planet. Now we are starting our biology class, and the topic we had started with was microorganisms, friends and foe. This chapter we had started in the last session, and we had introduced these microorganisms, the living organisms which could not be observed by the naked eyes. And we had found that how we can observe it with the help of the microscope. Now, in today's lecture, we are starting with the topic habitat. Habitat means the place where something or organisms are actually living. So, the habitat of microorganisms we had introduced in the last class also. And now, we are going to give you the details about the topics we had studied earlier. Let us begin with the topic habitat. So microorganisms, we said these are the little organisms, living organisms which could not be observed by the naked eyes. So that means the size of these organisms is very low. It is in microns, and therefore they are called as microorganisms. Now, we said that these organisms are found everywhere. What we mean by that everywhere? This everywhere includes what all things? So that is air, that is soil, and that is water. If we just count this particular air, soil and water, then definitely nothing is left in our surrounding. But one important thing is there to understand now. Is this composition or the physical conditions of air, soil and water is universal? Is same at each and every place? No, not at all. You can see the temperature in the Kashmir and in the Chennai, as we are in India, or we can, if we are assuming it worldwide, you can see the changes in the temperature. Not only the temperature, in all aspects there are the variations. What type of variations are observed? We can say it can be from your ice cold regions to a very hot condition. Generally, the polar regions or the snowy areas are having ice. And if ice is present at some place, definitely it is because of the very low temperature. Similarly, if we say hot springs or this hot climate, you can see the examples in the form of hot springs. So this is with respect to the temperature. Similarly, you can see the content of moisture in the different areas. It can be as dry as desert, or it can be as wet as marshy land. So these deserts, the area where the sand is present and there is a very low content of moisture. Similarly, the marshy area where the content of water is very high. And not only this is dry and very wet, you can see the variation in the percentage of this moisture content from one place to the another. When you move from one place to another, you can see the variation. In short, even we can say that when you are going on a vehicle or normally by any means, when you go from one place to another, you can find out the change in the temperature or the physical conditions in the environment. And that is all changing the environment in our surrounding. This environment is having air, soil as well as the water. So if these physical climatic conditions are changing from one place to another, then how these microorganisms can survive with such varied conditions? These variables do not affect the survival of the microorganisms because they have the power. They have the tendency to survive according to these varied conditions. In short, we can say the microorganisms, they can be found in air, soil and water with all kind of varied conditions. with respect to temperature, with respect to moisture, with respect to acidity, salt concentration, and so on. Whatever physical conditions are existing, these variations are observed in terms of the type of organisms living over there. But the strains could be different. The same microorganism could be found in varied conditions, but definitely there are certain changes within their living system. So therefore, these organisms are having such a special design. Although they are so small, but still they are provided with the special properties. What are those special properties? That these microorganisms, they can adapt to different conditions. What do we mean by this? We are using the word adapt here. What you mean by this particular term? So adaptation means to change themselves or to modify themselves according to the surrounding conditions for their own survival. Those organisms which can adapt or which can cope up with the existing situation or the conditions, they can survive, the others will vanish away. So these microorganisms, they have this special tendency, this special power to adapt according to the surrounding conditions. Now how is it possible? If we say the higher organisms, even they cannot adapt so easily with all kind of situations, then how these little microbes can possibly survive in the different conditions? This is possible because they are unicellular and they are reproducing by a simple mechanism, that is by asexual reproduction. So when they are reproducing by asexual reproduction, the procedure becomes quite simple. Why? Because asexual reproduction involves only one single parent. When single parent is involved, then definitely the chances of variations in their DNA is little bit less. The microorganisms, how do they reproduce? There is a cell which is dividing into two cells by copying the DNA. We can understand it with the help of this small diagram here. Suppose if there is a cell and it is having a nucleus, how is it going to divide? First, the nucleus will be dividing. It will split into two parts like this, and further the cell will start constricting, enlarging and constricting in middle, and each part will take up one of the nucleus, the dividing nucleus, and further it will split into two parts. It will form the two bodies or the two cells. Each will take up the nucleus from the existing or the dividing cells. Now, when the nucleus divided into two parts, definitely the genetic copy would also have been provided to the next level. In this case, there is very little chance of mixing of this particular DNA with any other type of DNA. When the DNA is being divided, then what will happen? A new copy would be formed, and the same parent will provide the copy of its own DNA to the next particular organism. So this is how the genetic information has been transformed. And since there is only one parent organism to provide this information, then the chances of variations becomes too low, and thus they are able to adapt according to the surrounding conditions. As we are saying that this nuclear material is being copied down to transfer it to the next level, then the chemical process was involved. This chemical process helped in making a copy of DNA, And we all know that all chemical reactions or any of the particular reaction must be having some of the error. The effectiveness is going to be affected. The efficiency is never 100% for any of the physical or a chemical activity. So during this process, some of the changes have occurred. And these changes which occurred during the DNA copying is going to help the organism to adapt the surrounding conditions. This is why the microorganisms can easily adapt to the different conditions. Further, these microorganisms are ubiquitous. That means they are present everywhere. Everywhere means we have just studied earlier in the previous slide as well as in the previous lecture that everywhere means air, water, soil or any place that you know. So therefore the term to such situation is given and that term is ubiquitous. Further, there are the organisms which can lead their life alone or they may live in a colony. So the organisms, microorganisms like amoeba, it is one of the examples of the microorganism which can live on its own as an individual organism. In short, it is a free living organism. Whereas there are certain organisms which are unicellular but they will stick to each other and will form a colony. So bacteria and fungi is such example. These fungi and bacteria, they can live in the colonies also. So these colonial organisms, although they are unicellular, but they are living as a group and these groups are known as colonies. Further, let us understand the types of organisms. There are many different kinds of microorganisms which can be useful or which can be harmful. And these microorganisms therefore can be classified as follows. The groups they are forming are bacteria, next is fungi, next protozoa and algae. Now there is one more particular group which is not mentioned here and that is virus. This virus is also a category of a microorganism, but it is not actually introduced in this particular slide. The reason behind that is because these are neither living nor they are dead organisms. They are the bridge between the living organisms and the dead organisms or the non-living things. So we are going to study about each and every category now onwards. Bacteria. What is a bacteria? Bacteria, it is a unicellular organism. It is the oldest type of organism and it is prokaryotic. Besides, what we mean by this prokaryotic? That means they do not have developed type of nucleus. And definitely they are having different other properties also. Next group shown here is fungi. What is this fungi? It is a kind of eukaryotic organism. These eukaryotic organisms, they are having the special properties. They have resemblance with plant origin, organisms from plant origin, as well as organisms from animal origin. How is it so? Because these are, you must have studied earlier that plant cells are those which are having the cell wall in their surrounding and chloroplast. So chloroplast helps in the photosynthesis. Cell wall is meant for protection, providing turgidity or a definite shape to the cell. Whereas animal cell, it is which is not having the cell wall and it does not have the chloroplast. If it does not have the chloroplast, then they are dependent on other organisms for their food material. So fungi is a category which is having resemblance with the plant cells as well as with the animal cells. How? Because they are having the cell wall but they do not have the chloroplast. This is the speciality of the fungi. We will study it in detail later. First, let's switch to the group protozoa. So these protozoa, They are the eukaryotic unicellular organisms. Means what? Unicellular organism means what? Those which can survive as a individual organism. A cell which is capable of performing all the life-sustaining functions. And eukaryotic means what? That they are having the developed nucleus. Bacteria, they were also the unicellular organism, but they were prokaryotic. So this is how you can compare the bacteria with the protozoa. The next group is algae. Algae is another kind of organism which is photosynthetic. It is unicellular. Sometimes it may occur in the multicellular form also, which are the lower versions of the plants, and these can be unicellular too. So these algae, the special property is that they are having cell wall and they are strictly photosynthetic. So this is how we can relate fungi with the algae. So now let us study about each. First, let us begin with the bacteria. So these bacteria, they are the smallest organisms which are known in the world. And not only the smallest, but they are the oldest living forms which are existing on the earth. So it is the bacteria which was first originated on the earth as a living organism. Further, the speciality of these organisms is that they are unicellular and they are prokaryotic. So the unicellular, as we have studied or just learnt about it, that these unicellular are those organisms in which a single cell is capable of performing its own all life-sustaining activities. While the prokaryotic, it means that they are having primitive type of nucleus. The word pro itself means primitive. Karyo means nucleus. So the cells which are having undeveloped type of nucleus, they are called as prokaryotic organisms. These bacteria, they can have cell wall in their surrounding or they may not have it. Besides that, these bacteria can be heterotrophic or they can be autotrophic. But all these are, we are saying, maybe and may not be, with respect to its nutrition and the presence of cell wall. These two conditions will vary according to the type of bacteria. But the property which is patent, which is typical for the bacteria, is that they are unicellular and they are prokaryotic. These bacteria can have different type of shape. Appearance is definitely different, and we can easily classify them on the basis of the shape. So the shape can be, it could be rod shaped, it can be spherical, or it can be spiral shaped. So the organisms or the bacteria which is having rod shape, they are known as bacillus or bacilli. The spherical shape organisms or the bacteria, they are known as cocci. Spiral shaped, that is spring. So that spring shaped organisms are termed as spirilla. You can think of this particular shape. If we are saying it is rod shaped or it is bacillus, then the appearance is somewhat like this, a rod, a cylindrical shape. Whereas spherical, it means round. Spiral shaped or spirilla. So spirilla, it is somewhat like this, or you can say it like this. It is a kind of a spring structure, or spirals are observed. So that would be known as spirilla. So we can also see it in the pictures further in the next diagram or this particular picture. The rod shape, which is called as bacilli, it is cylindrical in shape or rod-like, whereas cocci, it is spherical or round. Spirally or the spiralium, they are curved or they are having a spring-like texture. So these are the different shapes which are generally observed in the bacteria. There may be some other which are not shown here, but most common shapes are these which are shown here in the diagram. Let us now study the examples of these type of bacteria which are having different shapes. Bacilli, which is rod shaped. This is the picture of E. coli. E. coli, which is having rod shaped structure, and this is the magnified image of this particular organism. When it was stained and observed under the microscope, it appeared like these rod type particles, and these rod shaped structures, they are actually nothing but the organism E. coli. They are also known as coliforms, and they are actually found in the intestine of human beings. Now you can imagine the ubiquitousness of the organisms. They are not only found in our surrounding, but they are also found within our body also. So E. coli is one of the kind which is found in inside the living body, that is human being. So as these are found in the intestine, so it is known as enterobacteria. It is an enteric bacteria. The word coli, it is coming from the word colon. What is colon? It is a part of a small intestine. Intestine, which is present inside the human being, is having several different regions. I'm sorry, it's a part of large intestine. So colon, it's a part of intestine where the E. coli is found. So colon is giving rise to word coli in this particular organism. Further, normally these are not harmful, but definitely if the number exceeds the normal limit, it may cause some problem. Further, another shape we had studied is spherical. Those bacteria which are having a spherical shape, they are known as cocci. So the example of this cocci is Streptococcus aureus. The word coccus for cocci. It can also be written as S dot aureus. These S. aureus organisms, they are round in their structure. Further, another shape we had studied is spiral. That is, the organisms which are having a spiral shape, they are commonly called as Spirilli or Spirilla. The example of this is a group called as Clostridium. You can see these organisms here. They are not straight rod, which was a clear cylindrical structure, but here they are having curves in between. They appear as, you can see here, they are having curves, and these curves could be more than one. So these curved or the spiral structures which we are calling as spiralium, the example of it is Clostridium. Where this Clostridium is present? This Clostridium is generally found in the fecal material. The waste which we are releasing from our body is called as fecus, the undigested food material. And these Clostridium is commonly they are commonly found in such samples. When this mixes with the sewage water, it increases the count over there. And if such type of contaminated water is used or consumed, it can be harmful. It can cause different type of diseases, commonly related to your digestive system, like dysentery or diarrhea. So these particular organisms can have different type of shapes as we have discussed. Another group of microorganism is fungi. So fungi, we said that these organisms, they are eukaryotic and they are non-photosynthetic or non-autotrophic. Let us understand the details of this thing. Now this is one of the group which is comprised of diverse organisms. There are many species, there are many organisms in this single group. They are special because they are having similarities with animals as well as with the plants. What are those similarities? Similarities are that they lack chlorophyll. What is chlorophyll? It is a pigment found in the chloroplast which is needed for the photosynthesis. So do animals have this particular pigment? No. That means they are, as these fungi are not having chlorophyll, they are showing resemblance with the animals. So if they do not have chlorophyll, that means they cannot synthesize their own food. So from where do they get their nutrition? Animals, higher animals, they are ingesting food material and they have digestive system to digest it. But fungi is unicellular organism, or it is leading a colonial type of life. At some extent of life, it is showing multicellularity also. So if the organ system is not organized, how do they manage their nutritional requirements? It is because they feed on the decaying material, and the organisms who are feeding on the decaying, dead and decaying material, they are known as saprophytes. What the saprophyte is? The saprophyte is the organism which is surviving or which is dependent on food or dead and decayed material for their nourishment. So this is one of the special feature of these particular organisms. Now further, let us understand the resemblance of fungi with the plants. The special characteristic is that they are surrounded with the cell wall. So just like the plants, fungi cells are also surrounded by the cell wall. Now we have seen that the fungi cell, although it is having cell wall, but it is very much different from the plants. So the cell wall is also different in terms of chemical composition. In plants, cell wall is made up of cellulose, whereas in the case of fungi, cell wall is made up of another kind of carbohydrate that we call as chitin. These fungi, they are typically eukaryotic organisms. We can never find prokaryotic organism under this particular group. What do you mean by eukaryotic? Eu means true, karyo means nucleus. So the organisms which are having true developed type of organisms are called eukaryotic. So you can quote fungi as example of such eukaryotic organisms. Next is that they are multicellular. Now we must clarify this particular point here. Here we are saying these are multicellular organisms, but actually the fungi, they begin their life as unicellular organisms, and after a particular stage they will lead their life as a multicellular colony. Now why we are calling it as a colony? The reason is because they are free cells which are united together to form this particular group. Besides, there is no tissue formation and there is no further body or higher body organized form. No tissue, no organ system. But in this colony or in this multicellular group, the different parts have been specialized to perform different functions. Some of the parts become reproductive parts, the others become the non-reproductive parts. So therefore these are the organisms which can lead their life as a single cell, that is unicellular, and then in the later stages as a multicellular organism, that we can call as a colony. There are two types of fungi, yeast and mold. We are calling it as group because under the yeast and molds, many different organisms or many different fungi are coming. So broadly, the fungi can be of two types, or there are two common examples, that is yeast and the mold. Same thing you can understand with the help of the diagram also. The common examples given here are Aspergillus, bread mold, penicillium. So this Aspergillus, it is actually a kind of yeast. Penicillium, this is also an yeast. But the bread mold or the fungal growth you can observe over the surface of the bread, it is actually a mold. So in the Aspergillus you can see that there are some horizontal structures and there are some vertical structures also. Then above that there are some small chain-like structures which we are calling as chondrospores, which arises or which develops from the small structures called phyllate. Now, basically what we have to understand at this level is that they are unicellular. These are the single cells here which are united together to form a multicellular colony. And in this colony, the different parts have been developed, and these developed parts will participate in the reproduction. Some of them will not be activated for the purpose of reproduction, so they will be involved in some different other activities. Similarly, here you can see the example of bread mold. There are different parts in the mold. The common example or strain of this can be rhizopus. Here you can see there are some root-like structures. These are some vertical, horizontal lines, and then vertical, which are having the round bulb-like structures over its tip. So these horizontal lines, they are called as mycelium. These mycelium, they will be having the different branches, and those branches are called as the hyphae. Some of these hyphae or the vertical lines, they will develop a bulb-like structure which are having spores inside, and they will serve for the reproduction purpose. And such type or the such parts are known as sporangiophore. In the case of bread mold, these hyphae or the mycelium are the non-reproductive parts, and the sporangiophore will be the reproductive part. Example here is penicillium. These are generally found as spores or in the surroundings only. You can see here on the bread, it is an example of mold which is or the fungus growing on over the bread. So here you can see it as a colony, a black structure with white boundary. At home you might have observed that there is a colony or a growth of whitish color, green color, pink color. These are actually the mucor or the rhizopus which are growing on over the surface of the bread. So this is the example of fungus. So for now we are going to end up with this particular session. Today we have studied about the bacteria and the fungus. In the next session we are going to understand about algae, protozoa, and we'll continue further with the different parts. So till then, go through your studies, go through your lectures, study well, have a nice day. Thank you so much. Goodbye.